Guys, Ricky here with DoD Contract Academy. And look, today we have an awesome podcast. And it's awesome because we have a former client coming on. So this is Lisa Love. She's president and owner of L2 Cyber Solutions. They focus on cybersecurity. They do program management, cloud migration, a few things. And you're going to hear her talk about that. But she is absolutely killing it. She's about to triple her staff over the next couple of years. She has great wins. And she sells to an agency that we don't talk about very often on this podcast. So a hint, it's not the military, it's not one of the services. So you'll have to listen to hear how she's selling to them. And by the way, she's using subcontracting almost exclusively. And you can really build an enormous business, a profitable business, one you're proud of, by subcontracting versus priming. So you're going to hear her strategies, her techniques, lessons learned. This is a great episode. Don't miss it. And by the way, if you want us to help you start selling to the government or optimize what you're doing, go over to dodcontract.com where we have a done for you, a done with you, and you do it yourself. You could take our course. So 3 levels of options there. And we'd love to help you get started. We'd love to help optimize what you're doing. And, if you are in contract with the government, which is really when the work begins, as anyone out there knows, anything can happen while you're on contract with the government. Termination for convenience. You might have to take a look at your pricing and optimize your contract. Government might be asking you to do something that you didn't include in your proposal, and you need to get paid for that. There are a lot of different reasons why you might have to look at the contract you have and optimize that, troubleshoot it. And we have former contracting officers that are working with our clients to do just that. So if you have any problems in that area, please reach out to us. I think we can help. All right. Without further ado, on to Lisa Love and L2 Cyber Solutions. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in this week to the DoD Contract Academy podcast. I have what I'd like to consider a longtime friend, Lisa Love, on here today. Lisa, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you doing, Rick?
I'm good. And Lisa, so you're the president of L2 Cyber Solutions. And in full disclosure, I did some work for you back in the day, but not currently right now. So just wanted to put that out there. But I really loved your business and what you guys were doing. And you're doing something a little bit different also. Obviously, you're just by the name of the business, you're in cyber and cybersecurity and some things there. But a few things. One, you're selling to a different organization than we usually talk about on the podcast. And two, well, maybe most importantly, we both came from the Air Force, so I love kind of promoting that angle. But I'd really love to get into the intricacies of that. So maybe could you tell everyone maybe a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Thanks, Rick. I started my Air Force career back in 1991 during the first Gulf War. I decided to join the military for various reasons. It was also the start when things were escalating in the Middle East, and I thought, what better way to pay back, and support my country. But also, it was a different way for me to get education and training, doing something different. I wasn't sure what I was going to do in my early 20s, and that gave me a sense of direction of where to go. So I joined the Air Force. I got stationed at Laurie Air Force Base in the early 90s. And I stayed there until the base closed in 94. I had the option to stay in, and I elected to get out for personal reasons. My husband was working here in the Denver community, and it was time. The base was closing and an opportunity. So I kind of floundered a little bit, and then I had an opportunity to join the Air National Guard as a civilian during the week, and then a weekend warrior. Okay. So I went ahead and I did that, and I got posted supporting a space and missile warning mission, which I thought was very, very unique, and again gave me some interesting skills and some connections. And I did that for about three years, and then I had a coworker informed me that one of the contractors was hiring for a position, similar position as a contractor position. So I decided to leave the federal service and go work for Raytheon. And I worked for Raytheon for 10 years until I had the opportunity in 2008 to start my own business. And that is a whole other story in itself. But within my 10 years within Raytheon, I started out as an operator doing a similar mission to what I did in the Air National Guard. And then I went into test and engineering, and then I went into cybersecurity. And that sort of led me into the opportunity that I had in 2008 to start my own business.
Okay. Interesting. So it sounds like you did a few different things for Raytheon, and eventually they brought you into cybersecurity. And so how did you feel going into that? Because it can be complex, right? And it's something that it's a subject I like to bring on cybersecurity experts also because it involves almost everything that you could possibly be selling to the government, right? So, I mean, no matter what your solution is, software is, if it touches a government system, there are a whole host of things that we could talk about and ramifications. But back then, when you started in there, what did you like about it? What kind of what motivated you in that area?
It was different than the work I was doing at the time. I was working primarily for the test organization, doing IV&V on a specific component of one of the products we were working with at the time. And it was a little bit different. I wasn't so much in the weeds as much as I was when I was doing the other IV&V and the systems acceptance test. So I was able to take my skills as a test engineer and look at it from a security perspective. And at the time, this was like the early days of, I don't even know if NIST was even around back then, but or at least 853 was just on the early days of the FISMA reporting. But a lot of times we even went back to some of the Orange Rainbow book series for securing systems, and then of course the old D663 requirements. So for me, it was an easy translation to go from a test to the cyber security realm and say, okay, yeah, I understand the requirement, and then I can look at this early on and help them build the security or the information assurance early on. So that's what I kind of liked about it, and it was something that never ended, right? In my other position, software got landed in our lap or the product, we would test it and then we would hand it over to ops, and that was the end of it. And test, it's a continuing life cycle. It's something that you're always trying to keep up on. It's always changing. There's always new threats, something that we have to solve for. And I like being a problem solver.
Right. Awesome. So you transitioned from the Air Force to Raytheon, and then you mentioned you kind of we didn't get too much into why you started your own business. But eventually you felt the calling of an entrepreneur and decided to leave Raytheon and start your own cybersecurity business. I'm assuming it was when you started as well. But what kind of led to that? What need did you see that you wanted to fill?
It was actually the customer I was supporting at the time, and my contract was ending with Raytheon. They wanted us to do some follow-on work. I took it back to management. Unfortunately, it wasn't a high enough dollar amount. It was low, six figure, like under 200K, I think was the dollar amount. So to a large organization like Raytheon, they have to look at the cost of managing that contract and what they get out of it. So I had to go back to my customer and say, sorry, this is my last week, but if you have a question, I'm always around. I can always, help a little bit.
Yeah.
And he kind of threw over the fence, like, hey, why don't you come work for me? And I was sort of shocked. I was like, wow, what do you mean? And he says, yeah, you can come work for me either as a federal employee or as an independent contractor. I had no idea being an independent contractor was even an option.
Right.
Especially after, I was approaching my 10 years with Raytheon. It was, a great company, still is a great company to work for. And I thought about it. I said, I kind of went home. I spoke to my husband, and then I went back to my customer. And I said, so how does it work for the contractor perspective? And we just sort of worked out the details. And in June or spring of 2008 is when I formed my own company. I left Raytheon, which is bittersweet.
Yeah.
And I started working for that customer, and I'm still with that agency today that I started out with in 2008, which is NOAA.
Awesome. And that's really where one of the intriguing things too is that you are working with NOAA, and there's so many different federal agencies. Like sometimes it boggles my mind because, I'll have a lot of clients come through for different, things, different fires they want to pull out. And sometimes it's like this agency that I've never heard of before, just, the National Museum, blah, 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 you never even knew they existed, but there are so many agencies out there. And NOAA is one of them that has, of course, people know about NOAA, right? But, I got to learn a lot more about them working with you. Maybe we could talk a little bit about, and this resonates, I think, with a lot of the people that first start listening to our podcast and start looking at government contracting, is they have no idea that there's even an opportunity out there, right? So now you're obviously focused on cybersecurity, and that's, even amongst the huge spending that the government has, cybersecurity is up there amongst one of the top. So I think they spent something like $70 billion last year on IT and cyber related efforts, right? And then about 37 billion ish was small business contracts. So, but a lot of businesses, cyber or not, don't even know that the government's buying what they sell, and don't know that the government buys from small businesses. So you were learning about this, it sounds like, because you're providing value, and this I can resonate with. A contract changes and you're used to working with someone and they're good, and you don't want them to leave. It happened all the time with us in the Air Force. And so that kind of is how you started. And we had, I think it was Dr. Kizzy Parks on, who started in a similar way, not in cyber, but she was a contractor. She became a contractor because of her relationship working with a government agency. So how did that go because were you a army of one at that point, switching over as a contractor for NOAA?
Yeah, I was definitely Army of One for about a year.
Okay.
And I kept taking on more and more work, and I realized, okay, I can't do it all by myself. And so I got additional funding for another FTE, another SME to support me, and sort of just organically grew. So all the work that we got, even today, is 90% of it is word of mouth or referral. We haven't pounded the pavement. We do have a GSA contract. We'll respond to some RFIs, but we really just try to look at, the value of going after that work. And first of all, do we have the time to go after it? But at that time, I was doing pretty much everything, not only the client work, but the back office work. So after a year, I decided, well, I'm going to hire another engineer. I got funding from that for the customer, added them onto my subcontracts. And then I also hired a full-time office admin assistant to help me with all the other back office administrator work. One thing I did learn that I brought with me when I worked at Raytheon, because again, I felt they were a good company and they had great benefits. What I did when I set up my firm, even though I was just a entity of one at the time, I set it up as though I had all the benefits that I had at Raytheon, and then we set it up that as we grew, we can add people to those benefits.
Okay, interesting. So you basically had a great benefits program when you started bringing people in, and just kept that running, which attracts great people. Which is why we were just talking about Claudine, who is one of your A players there, and one of the reasons I'm sure she loves working for you. Interesting. So you got to grow it organically, and taking some of that funding that started becoming available because they saw what you were doing there, and you started growing it slowly but over time. How do you, because you mentioned you get most of your work through referrals, like 90%, and that's a lot. But I always say, whenever I go to work with someone, the easiest way to sell to the government is to start with an existing client and start really providing value and asking if they can, help you, if anyone can use your product or services. How did it work for you? Was it more driven from the client initially, and then you kind of learned the ropes, or, and then I'm assuming that you just kind of learned and have some of your own techniques now. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, originally it was definitely from the client. One client would talk to somebody else and say, hey, I need a cybersecurity person to help me close POAMs, or I need an auditor, or I need somebody to help, establish, whatever, help implement ECMO or CDM or something. And we would get, they would say, oh, I know, at the time, we were under a different name. We were in, our parent company is L Squared. We do DBA as L2 Cyber Solutions. But everybody say, oh yeah, I know Lisa Love. So, the hard part was telling them, okay, it's not just me. I have another group, there's some people behind me. And so now it became a problem of marketing us as the company name, not just the individual.
Right.
So, yeah. So, but moving forward, then it came down to, okay, who can we team with? As we started looking at new contract vehicles or opportunities, we said, all right, who can we join and participate with? And one of the earliest things I was ever told when I first started my company, I spoke to a contracting officer at the time within NOAA, and she gave me the best advice. I said, okay, well, how do I get a contract? Because that's everybody's first question, right? How do I get into this? And she's like, well, why do you want a contract? And I said, well, because, I want to do more work. She goes, well, actually what you want to do is you really just want to be a sub. And if you can, and she gave me a couple, and there's pros and cons to being a sub and a prime.
Right.
But on the sub side at that point, again, we're still small. We don't have a lot of overhead, and being the sub helps us manage that overhead cost, but yet still grow in a method that there's less risk.
Sure.
And so as we started growing and getting a reputation within NOAA, companies started coming to us and saying, oh yeah, I've heard about you, let's team, this recompete's coming up, we can use somebody with your quals. And then so we would just start joining teams that way. And it's a little bit of both, where now we market, now we go to certain companies that we know, and we'll come up with an opportunity and we'll either take it to them. But still 90% of the time people are coming to us saying, hey, we want to team with you, we've heard about you, we want to learn more about you.
Right. Okay. No, that's really interesting. What do you think because you mentioned the pros and cons of being a sub and a prime. So some of the pros that I believe you just stated about being a sub is, first, you don't have to manage the contract with the government, right? And you can grow organically. What are some of the other pros of being a sub?
I think it gives, again, it's just that pressure of not having to manage that contract. I mean, and then and for me, because, I'm risk averse as far as, how much debt I'm going to take on to grow, because it does take money and funds to do that. I can control the growth by managing the teaming agreements, by saying, if I get an opportunity, I can say, well, we're only capable, or I'm only comfortable taking on a certain percentage of work or a certain number of FTEs, so that I don't have to take out huge loans or go into debt to manage that work. And then it allows me, and then I'm comfortable knowing that my employees I will always make payroll, I can always make benefits and all these things, but yet still grow. The cons are that you are at the behest of not only the customer, but now your prime, right?
Yeah.
At any point, they can say, well, it's not in our business interest to renew your option period. So there is that risk. And then the recompetes, as things happen, you're not always going to get on the same team. And so you have to always look and forecast several years in advance to how you're going to manage that work, and what are the strategies, and get to know what the acquisition strategy is for both your prime and the customer, so that you can manage your options.
Yeah, working with a prime, you're right, is, you got to pick a good prime to work with, because some of them won't give you all the information that's available, right? Or, because, first and foremost, they're interested in their own profit margins and, what they're doing. How do you go about picking a good prime? There are some things that you're looking for when you're trying to pick someone to partner with?
Yeah, usually it's alignment of company values and mission. What is it that they want to obtain? What's important to them as an organization? What's their reputation within the community? Not only within the agency that they're working in, but just more widely.
Mm-hmm.
How do they treat their employees? Those type of things.
Yeah.
The other thing is looking at how transparent they are in their deals, and how upfront they are when you're first negotiating an opportunity. Are they right away willing to commit to teaming agreements and work share? If they're humming and hawing, I might be a little less hesitant to work with them. And then I have to look at synergies, where I have to make sure we're not in direct competition with them, because a lot, everybody does cybersecurity, or everybody does project management, or a couple, things that overlap with us. The key is making sure that we're not seen as competition, that we won't outshine them, but that we can help each other, and that we truly are teams. And it's somebody that has that true team mentality.
Interesting. Do you take into account how big a company is? Does that matter at all for you, or is it?
Yes, definitely. And it's based on the opportunity too, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, if we're going after a $200 million opportunity, a small business may not be the right fit. Maybe
Yeah.
it's a larger opportunity because they have more reach back, more bench, more support to go after the work, those type of
Mhm.
things, and,
Okay.
and and cash flow, right, to pay their subs. That's the other
Right.
thing.
Yeah. Well, no, that's a good point. Do you have any, and you could say no, or I don't want to talk about this, but do you have any examples of maybe a situation with a prime? You don't have to name names, but like that hurt your company, or that or at least something that you want to avoid in the future, and that like our audience can maybe think about?
Lessons learned, sure. So, couple early scare earlier on. I mean, I was maybe just 5 years into my business, and all of my work was really under one contract, one prime.
Mhm.
And so that should be the first lesson. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Diversify, have more than one prime. The other thing is, even though you might have had a long-term relationship with that organization, in this case it was a 5-year relationship, things had been going good, and they approached me. They said, "Oh yeah, we want you on the team for recompete." And I said, "Yeah, I had no other I just said, yeah, I have no option, or no, not option, but I have no inclination to go with another team. I'm happy partnering with you guys." They were a strong company, loved working with all of them, and didn't get anything in writing. It was all verbal because I had trust at that point.
Right.
But the bottom line is, get everything in writing. The old adage, to quote Reagan, trust but verify.
Yeah. No, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So,
And
no.
that's through everything. And you'll find over time that and I'm sort of in a situation even now where I have a 15-year relationship with one of my primes, and it's been good. We've helped each other grow, but there's some tensions right now, and that's also normal. You have to realize these are relationships, just like your personal relationships. And there's going to be rough spots, and you just have to learn how to weather those.
Yeah.
Patience is key, which is really, really hard, especially when you have certain expectations and you're waiting for that partner to basically share their candy. I like my analogy I gave my husband the other day is, you're going trick-or-treating with a bunch of friends, and you combine all your candy in one bag, and the prime's holding the bag of the candy, and you go home and you dump all that candy out, and as you start picking through what you want, all of a sudden the prime says, "No, that's mine," and he doesn't want to share anymore. And so it's kind of like, well, it's like, well, oh, okay, now I feel sort of cut out. But again, get everything in writing. Have those don't be afraid to have those open and frank discussions.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about subcontracting, and some businesses make their entire living on subcontracting and using resellers, and there's a lot of different ways depending on what your service or software offering is. But so now, current day, are you priming and subbing, or what does it look like for L2?
We are definitely just subbing. We do look at opportunities to prime, but again, we're very discerning. We're not doing the shotgun splatter approach. We're not responding to every opportunity. We really look at, what is our P-win? Do we have customer knowledge? What is our past performance? What's the dollar value?
Mhm.
What is the response time? I've sort of learned the tricks depending on how opportunities come out, and depending on what sort of questions are asked and certain things, that we end up passing on a lot of opportunities. A lot of them also are, a lot of people just outprice us. They're just low value for us.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is, yeah, I could probably win the work if I do a lower price, but to me, my reputation, the quality of work that I have is important. So I'm not willing to go lower in price.
Yeah, no, that's important. And I mean, that's a frustration on the government side too, because I know probably you see it a lot with the people you work with. A lot of times the people that are managing the efforts have no say whatsoever over whether an opportunity is going to be like a lowest price technically acceptable or what. But we also, I think, realize you have to pay more for talented people and for really good products and solutions. And obviously that's what you're providing. So can we pivot a little bit and maybe let's talk about L2 and the solutions that you provide? Like, what would you say your niche is?
So we have three core niche. We is cybersecurity and project management and network architecture. Those are what we really focus in. We don't really do a lot of normal O&M system administrator. We have a few positions, but that's not really the work that we go after. The type of support we provide within those three core capability areas within an organization are really at the tactical and strategic level. We're working with organizations to help them implement their IT strategies, goals, and missions. So if their focus, in this case for NOAA, is all about cloud migration, that's where we're swimming in. We'll help them on the cybersecurity side. We'll help them on the project management side and on the networking side, working with them on how to get data products between different partners. What does that networking connectivity look like? On the project management side, it's using methodologies such as SAFE and other tools to help them realize their mission and actually get to their goals faster and more efficiently using the SAFE methodologies for
What
Agile.
is SAFE?
It's an Agile approach for project management.
Okay.
And I'm not a SAFE practitioner, but we have employees that are certified and a partner of the SAFE Agile process. And I'll look up the acronym here in a minute for you. Again, I can get it for you.
Yeah, no worries. Just wanted to, because I know sometimes I can get acronym heavy, and I realize the audience might not be,
Basically, it's Agile. It's a different approach for Agile.
Okay.
And then on the cybersecurity side, again, looking at strategically how to implement cybersecurity from an enterprise holistic goal, not just down in the weeds. Yes, there's an operational component and an O&M component as far as ISO support and certain things like that, but looking at how you can really look at cybersecurity again holistically. And for me, not looking at it just from a compliance perspective, but supporting the agency and saying, how do we get better? And utilizing, again, methodology like cybersecurity frameworks to measure, not only, again, checking the box, but how well they do it and looking at that improvement from an improvement standpoint.
Okay. Do you get involved with things like FedRAMP or CMMC?
We don't really get involved in those. We touch FedRAMP in that we utilize many vendors that are already FedRAMP certified, and we'll look at their packages, and we try to work with, build our processes around the framework so we're not being so that we're not redundant, so that we can reuse what we can from FedRAMP. But as far as CMMC, no, nothing.
Okay. It's probably a good thing considering some of the some of the discussions that are centered around that now. No, that's really great. And so right now, how many employees do you have?
We have 12.
Okay.
10 are billable, and 2 are in the back office.
Roger. Okay, so 12 employees now. You're subbing, you're diversified, you're growing. I know we talked a little bit before the show about some recent wins that you've had. I don't know if you want to get into that at all right now. We can leave that off if you want, or we can talk about it. But I guess the point is that you're still making progress, and it looks like you're going to continue to grow over the next few years. Yeah.
With our recent wins with our prime contracts, prime companies, we have a huge opportunity for growth within the next 5 to 10 years across the various contract vehicles. One contract vehicle is with the Department of Commerce. It's a good. It just recently got awarded this last spring. I don't know if it's still under protest. I believe that announcement should come out soon.
Mhm.
But that contract it's a 10-year, almost $1 billion BPA, and it got awarded to something like 14 or 15 companies, and we're on one of the teams. So huge growth potential there.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, and then the other one is within NOAA. Huge opportunity with surrounding cloud support and migration efforts for NOAA, especially the satellite office with our teaming partner. And that is a huge growth opportunity as well, that we're expecting to be able to lend our expertise to. And again, and then there's several other opportunities with them. And again, most of these were within NOAA, because it's always, do what you know best. And while I want to branch out to other agencies, the work, and again, organically, people coming to us wanting to team with us, they are keeping us busy within NOAA.
Sure.
Our outlook for new work with NOAA, we're chasing at least 4 or 5 opportunities that are going to, again, another 5 years out on top of what we already have.
Yeah.
So our anticipation, if everything comes to fruition like we expect it to be, my anticipation is that we should be able to double, if not almost triple, our staff within the next 1.5 years, 2 years.
Oh, wow. That's great. Well, congratulations. Sounds like
Yeah.
things are really moving forward for you. So I think it would help, maybe some of the people that are new to federal sales and the process, when you talk about, winning some of these, some of these vehicles and opportunities, and you're doing it through primes, what does that process look like? Do you, a lot of people will buy something like a bid match tool and set something up to find out about opportunities. What does your research mechanism look like? And how would somebody go about doing something like that, or trying to recreate some of the success that you've had?
So for us, it's surrounded by the agency we support. We look at all the vendors that have supported or want to support that agency,
Mhm.
and then we've just sort of branched out and try to foster relationships. Some of the work that we are teaming with some new primes, we started conversing with them several years ago, like 3 years. And so for me, you almost have to look 3 to 5 years out of where you want to be, because it's a cultivating relationship. And again, it's
Right.
going back to what it is I look for in a prime. For me, it's building that relationship. I'll sit there and I'll talk to a company for 3 years. I'll build a rapport with them, a relationship, until we find that perfect match. And in many cases it's taken 3 years. We constantly share information back and forth. We're kind of feeding off of each other, what works, what doesn't work, and eventually something will hit. And it's having that patience, right? A lot of people, a lot of companies have grown much faster than me. They're 5 times, 20 times the size of me, even though they started the same year. And
Mhm.
that's great for them. But again, for me, I had a personal constraint, and that was one. I wasn't going to go into financial debt to grow the company. I was going to do it responsibly. And I wanted to also maintain quality of the work and the value we provide. So that's why we're still small.
Sure.
So I think so I think going back to that again, it's just making sure that, fostering those relationships, and then once you do that, then you can say, okay, what other work do you have? What other agencies do you have? And then you can branch out from there. And that's also networking, finding people like yourself, using resources such as PTAC,
Mhm.
Small Business Administration, going to conferences,
Right.
just
Huge.
seeing who's in your space, and just meeting with them. Couple conferences I've gone to, the Cyber Symposium, which is actually usually I would go to. I think it's this week in Colorado Springs.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I did not attend this year, but also there's a Space Symposium. Great opportunity to meet vendors and obviously see what the customers are looking for, what they're shopping for.
Yeah, no, I was out there, I think in June for a conference recently. So, I mean, speaking of conferences, and this might not be something the unschooled really think about, but just like every other industry, the government, the federal marketplace has conferences, and they're, at least for me, it seems like they're either centered around a specific capability where you might have multiple agencies, or it's centered around the agency itself. Now, how do you decide what conferences you want to go to? Are you looking at, hey, we do a lot of work with NOAA, so these are the big conferences for them?
I look at, yeah, so for NOAA, it's not so much a conference, it's more like an industry day if they're looking
Okay.
to let out like a big contract vehicle, like the
Hmm.
recent Nimitz or ProTech or something, and then
Sure.
you'll get vendors, mass onto those things, and you can find some new players in the space. Especially if it's a new version of those vehicles, and the agency is looking for new blood, it's a great opportunity to branch out. But for other agencies, yeah, it's looking at. I look at, like, I know the VA has some. I know the DA. I mean, the DoD has them. I mean, they
Hmm.
all do. I think when I look at those, I look at who's attending. I look at what synergies they have as far as my performance and how it can relate to the work that I'm doing within NOAA. The interesting is that NOAA has a very interesting mission in that they kind of touch a little bit on everything,
Hmm.
from space to the ocean. So, I mean, there's some classified work. There's a lot of things that kind of branch that can support different agencies that we can say, oh yeah, I can speak satellite, or I can speak ocean services or something like that, or whatever it is. And so you can kind of take that experience and say, okay, I can apply it over to this agency. So it's just trying to find that right partner again, that you can build that rapport over time and say, especially if it's a larger company that needs to meet some small business qualifications. And then I can
Sure.
say, well, here we are, right? We can help support you in that effort.
Yeah, no, there's a lot that goes into it, for sure, and I think that people are probably starting to realize why you decide to grow slowly, right? Because when you start talking about taking on more people and now attending conferences, and you have to do business development and you have to do
Hmm.
X, Y, and Z, that gets really big really fast, and it can become unwieldy if you don't have processes in place to manage all of that, and to move forward. But clearly you do, and I'm really glad to see the progress you're making. I was wondering if you had some advice for somebody new that's just starting. I ask every business owner that's been on a question that's kind of like this, but if they're just getting started, what would be some advice that you would give to them, to the small business owner?
Don't try to do everything yourself. I think is number one.
Hmm.
I think trying to do all the bookkeeping, the taxes, the legal, contracting. Um, don't try to do it yourself. You'll make mistakes. You'll It's just too much work. Number one, you'll miss something for sure. The other thing is, when you do hire support staff, whether you 1099 them, you bring in a third party, is it's hard to give up trust. Um, and some people look at it, either trust is earned, or you can give them that trust right up front. But I think as long as you have those checks and balances to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do, you don't have to micromanage. In other words, you have to trust them to do what they're going to do, and let them make the decisions. And I think sometimes that's the hardest thing. I struggled with that for probably the first 10 years.
Yeah,
And it caused some friction internally within the back office, where I was encroaching in certain swim lanes, especially when it came to dealing with personnel.
sure.
Uh, Especially as a small business, because we know everybody. It's such a family atmosphere. You want to help everybody, but then the minute you start making exceptions in one area, then that's where your HR person comes in and says, well, you can't do that. And then you say, well, why not? I'm the business owner.
Yeah.
But there is that. And just be consistent, I think, is too. Be consistent, always be transparent and upfront with people as much as you can.
Well, that is great advice, and really appreciate you coming on the podcast. It was great to see you again,
Yeah, you
and
too.
it's also really great to see all the success you're having, and we really wish you the best of luck. And for all those listening, this has been a great episode with Lisa Love of L2 Cyber Solutions. Lisa, if someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best place to find you?
On our website, www.l2cybersolutions, or sorry, l2cyber.com.
L2cyber.com. And we'll put that link in the show notes for everyone. And I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile as well if they want to reach out to you, whatever reason. Thanks for listening this week, everyone. Make sure to check out DoDContract.com when you get a chance, and we will see you next week.